Hello and welcome to a scary, fearful episode of PredictoCast, the podcast where we predict the plot of a movie we know nothing about. I'm Josh, and with me on this fearful journey, as always, is Skinner. Hey, Skinner.
Hey, Josh. Hey, all you city dwellers out there.
I mean, it's not even close to Halloween yet, but I already have, I'm feeling scared from this movie that we're going to talk about today.
I mean, the Halloween candy is already in the stores. I don't care when you're listening to this.
That's true.
It's true. It's true whenever. But
that is true. It's at a point now where it's just, we have stores that are, like in my neighborhood, there is a store, Halloween City, open all year round, so you can go at any time. But eventually, we're just going to be in normal grocery stores. There's going to be a Halloween candy section that will always be full. I mean, the Monster cereals, came out in July, I think.
Oh, the Monster cereals can't be around too much, if you ask me.
But yeah, so this week on the show, we are talking about the 1984 film FearCity. Boy, oh boy. I think, on our mini episode last week, we kind of gushed about like how it felt like it was perfect just from that poster. And like, this is one of those like wonderful moments where you see a poster for something and you're like, oh man, that looks so awesome. I hope that it lives up to the image that I have in my head of this movie just from looking at the poster. And it does. It really does. Like, this is one of those instances where it's like, oh yeah, they nailed it. Like, they knew this, it's marketed correctly by this poster, and the movie gives me exactly what I want.
This movie is excess in everything. Like, and to find out reading about it, that it was actually edited down to be less scummy. And like
you can tell.
You can tell, like the cuts are there, that it was worse than it could have been. But like, man, everything that's just sleazy in this movie, it just like lingers a little longer than you think.
Yeah, I will say that this was like 95 minutes, something like that. If you cut out all of the nudity and the stripping scenes, it would be probably about 15 minutes shorter.
There is a baffling amount of nudity and stripping in this. No lovemaking scenes, because that would be too much.
It is weird that we don't have any sex scenes. We do have like a moment. We have that weird moment where Tom Berenger puts something in Melanie Griffith's mouth.
Yeah, she has little the little hairpins you keep your hair up with.
Oh, that's what that was. I could not tell what that was. I think I looked away to take a note, and I was like, "What is he putting in her mouth?"
And then he puts his hands up her shirt. She okay. In my head, Melanie Griffith. We grew up in the 80s. Giant star, right? Giant mainstream star. She is nude in this movie so goddamn much, in a way that you just never see
from the beginning.
From the beginning, but she's nude in almost every scene, and not like body double. She is nude constantly. When she's wearing clothes, she's barely wearing clothes.
That's what I was gonna say. Is that in her first like dancing scene, when you first see her, I think like you see her face, and then she turns around and starts to take her top off, and I was like, okay, they're gonna cut to like a far away shot so they can use a body double, or they'll figure out some sort of ways to avoid showing her breasts, and nope, she just turns around and you see it all.
It's funny because like you said, the way it's shot, it's teasing it, and then it cuts away to them talking to our good buddy Mike up in the control room. And like that goes on for a while, and then we cut to a shot where they can see who's on the stage, and it is just her completely nude. I'm like, oh, I guess we're just going to. I'm like, oh, they just showed it all, and it is just her. And then they come back, and like I thought, okay, well, the stripping scene's over. It is not.
Is this a prequel to Milk Money?
Yes, it is. Anytime in this movie you think to yourself, oh, I guess the stripping scene's over. It's not. No, nope. It absolutely
it keeps going. Yeah, it's a shocking amount of nudity that I wasn't expecting. Like, this is okay. So I'm gonna try to break this down in a fun way. Like, I was thinking about this movie, and it's like it does the thing that you kind of expect from movies of this type, and then it builds on it in a weird way. So it's like, all right, we've got we've got this kind of Jack the Ripper style killer. Like he's out there sort of cleansing the city and taking out the filth as he sees it. This is the perspective we get from him. So I'm like, okay, cool. So he's not targeting sex workers. He's targeting strippers, which is a little strange. But then it's like, all right, well, we got to think about how do the strippers get booked for stripping? It's not just that they work at a club. They actually have like a talent agency that sends them out to places. Okay, cool, fine. That's an extra element. Oh, yeah. we need our main guy to have a tragic backstory. Okay, well, he's a boxer that he killed someone in the ring. Okay.
We need to know that he is not only a former fighter, he was too good at it.
Yes, he was too good, so he had to stop, and now he runs this stripper talent agency. And then we got to have the mob involved for some reason. The mob controls these companies that send strippers out. All right, cool. And then also we got to have the cops involved, and we got to have a racist cop. But it's not going to be a white guy. It's going to be a black guy who's racist against Italians.
And okay, we're gonna make that cop one of the biggest stars in the movie, Billy Dee Williams. And what is amazing about this movie is, and what is fantastic about it is, like, this is a murder mystery for everyone except for the audience, right?
Yes, because we know who the killer is from the first scene we see him.
We see him right away, and he has nothing to do with anybody. Like, it's all these people trying to figure out motive, who's doing it to who, what's going on. Instead, it's a guy they do not know who has nothing to do with them. It is completely random to them, right? They has nothing personal to do with them. He's just a crazy guy.
Yeah, and he is just Jack the Ripper. He's just killing whores, as he calls it.
He's just Jack the Karate Ripper. And
that's the other thing, is that we gotta have this slasher, but he also has to do karate for some reason.
He has to do naked katas. But like on top of that, we had to have this whole murder mystery, and like it was literally 1 hour and 13 minutes until one of our main characters saw the guy. and it is like I wrote down at 1 hour and 10 minutes. There's not a soul in this movie who has a clue who the killer is. Not a soul. Like they don't have a lead. They don't have. They're all blaming each other. They're all wrong, and no one like. Yeah. And you never the police detective Wheeler, Billy Dee Williams, never is even close to solving this mystery.
No.
And then in the end, he doesn't.
No, he just gets laid on his lap.
He doesn't do anything to help this. And then he had, like, at the end, he's like, "Good work, boy." I'm like,
yeah, he's arguably kind of our antagonist, because he keeps getting in the way of our hero, who we know is eventually going to stop the bad guy. I do love that we have a boxer versus a karate master at the end of this movie.
It's so good. You could so easily make Billy Dee Williams' character Wheeler be Hamburger from that other movie, because he's also a great shot.
He is. This is a year after Return of the Jedi, one of the biggest films of all time. And then he's deciding, I'm going to go from Lando, this guy who everybody loves because he kind of, realizes the error of his ways, and he redeems himself, and he's great, and people love this guy, and I get to fly the Millennium Falcon. I'm going to go be a racist cop in this next movie.
Who doesn't solve anything. And then your main character here, Matt Rossi, Tom Berenger, who is, per Tom Berenger standards, an emotionless nothing, right? Which is they've built into the movie why he's like
they
that.
Built this character to be sort of this weird. I mean, he has that one burst of emotion when he destroys his own office a little bit in the middle of the movie. But yeah, other than that, he's pretty restrained for the most part. Even when he's fighting this murderer at the end.
When he trains for it by doing some shadow boxing and skipping. But like, here's this guy who we're told, he has a tragic backstory of he was a boxer and he killed his opponent and he's damaged from it. So he's emotionally blocked off. And like his girlfriend, Loretta, who's Melanie Griffith, like has moved on because he's so emotionally cut off. They can't be together anymore, and then they have a professional relationship. But she's still like, The problem is I love you too much. I'm afraid to go to bed with you because I love you too much. He's too great at everything.
Yeah.
But he's not but like everyone in this movie is a piece of shit. There's nobody who's not. And that's
truly
what's
just
great. That's what's great about it. There's no person who's good.
Truly just a cavalcade of awful people.
And
I mean, I guess Layla's okay, but she dies very in the middle of the movie. So
she does. It took me a little bit to realize that the killer wasn't killing people. He was just
not at first.
Not at first. He was just messing with. Watching him fucking and he has no consistency with what he's doing. Sometimes he
don't spoil it because I want to talk about each of these little things as we go. So let's just get into it. Let's get into this thing.
Synth credits from the start, good slashy font, a fantastic fucking
that's
song.
What I was gonna say is we talked a lot about how like the poster looked and like the font on the poster looked really great, that cool like FearCity logo. And they do something that not a lot of movies do. They carry that font over into the credits of the movie. That doesn't happen that often. A lot of times they're very disconnected. You know, the credits are done by some other company. The poster's done by a completely different person. There's no communication between them. But in this thing, it feels like Abel Ferreira or whoever was involved in making sure this stuff worked was like, yeah, I want the same title. I want the same title type treatment on the poster, on the font and the credits. I want it all the same, and I want it to feel consistent. And they nailed it. I loved it. I was like, oh man, these credits are amazing.
I wish I had written down more of the lyrics of the song. All I have down is "Bleeding Night" still tantalizing me.
So this is a song that I think was written for the movie by David Johansen of the New York Dolls, and this song is called New York Doll. He wrote a song titled after a band he was in. It's a pretty great opening song. Like it's a good song that kind of pumps you up and like gets it going. And I'm like, this movie starts off exactly how you want. You got a ton of strippers. You got shots of 80s New York in like Times Square when it was a real shithole and like families didn't go there and you could not go to a Sephora or a Guy Fieri restaurant. And it was just like, oh, this is exactly what I want.
And then you got Buster Poindexter singing the whole fucking song.
Yeah. And so we meet our two sort of main guys pretty quickly, Maddie and Nikki, and they show up at this club on business, and we find out a lot of stuff about them pretty quickly. That Maddie dated Loretta, who played by Melanie Griffith. She's on stage right now, and they're there to pick up some commissions, some money from Mike, the owner of this club, who proceeds to beg them for more time. It's very much a like mob thing. They show up, they're asking for money. The guy's like, "Oh, I don't have it. Can you come back on Friday? Please give me a chance. Please, I'm begging." But we realize very quickly that these guys, they're very laid back. They're easygoing. They're like, "It's fine. No problem." And so then he gives them a bottle of liquor as payment for giving him more time to get them their actual payment. And yeah, it's like a good way to set up that these guys work for the mob, are involved with these strippers and getting money, but also they're pretty easygoing. They're not going to break your thumbs if you don't have their money right away.
It's funny because like they are set up like they're mobsters, except for they're not quite mobsters, and they are kind of under the thumb of actual mobsters.
Yes,
it's like one step. Like they're like, oh, like you feel like there had to be a version of the script where they were straight up part of the mob. And then and someone realized, no, let's remove them one step so they're more like the good guys. They're not really. In any other movie, in almost any other movie, one of them is actually the bad guy.
I think that's what
like
we
Nikki,
were expecting.
Nikki just to me, in any other movie is the bad guy.
Yeah, and I kind of like that they didn't go that route though.
No, because none of them are. No one, because the killer, right from the start, we know, is nobody.
So, like,
he's in a whole different movie.
Yeah, and we meet him here pretty quickly. Like the they kind of wrap up their business there, and the dancers are like kind of going their separate ways. And one of the dancers is Ola Ray. She was in a ton of stuff. She probably most notably for being in the Thriller video. She was in a lot of other stuff, but she's walking home and walking along the street, and we see a guy following her, and I was like, oh, could that be the killer? That can't be the killer. They're not just going to show you who it is right away. And no, sure enough, that is him. He grabs her and he pulls her into an alleyway, and he pulls out some scissors and starts to stab at her. And we don't see exactly what happened, and we're left kind of in suspense about whether or not she is still alive. We don't know if she's dead or not. We assume she's dead, but
we assume she's dead. It's cut back and forth with stripping shots because that's what this fucking movie is. And
yes,
like, and this is where you can tell that this movie was re-edited, because I think this scene in particular was more graphic at first.
Probably so, but I will also say that I think Shout Factory, I rented this on Amazon, which I'm assuming that's how you watched it too.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that they did the best they could to remaster everything they could find, because there are notable shots in the movie where the quality changes.
Yes.
And I think it's because they only had like low quality tape versions of the movie at that point. They didn't have the actual film, because the movie looks pretty good for the most part. They did a good job of remastering it. And then there are moments where it's like really fuzzy, like you're watching it off of an old VHS tape. And I think that that's just all they could find for those scenes. And we see some of that here when Loretta goes to her dressing room, and Ray Don Chong, who plays Layla, is there, and we kind of realize they have a relationship. And as they start to like kiss, the quality changes. So it's like they went in and I guess cut out all the kind of lesbian subplot, because that is, I guess that was not allowed in 84. I guess that would have made the movie an X-rated or something. And that happens a couple times.
It's funny because they do kind of reverse course on it pretty quickly in general, where Loretta still loves our amazing lead, Matt Rossi, and just loves him too much, really. But like when like Matt complains about, because Matt watches him like a fucking creeper from like the crack of a door, like, and then he's complaining about it because he's just so mad that she's kissing a girl. And Nikki, his partner's like, she's moved on. She just found somebody else. Like he doesn't make any huge deal of it by 1984 standards.
No, yeah. I think it's just one of those things. I don't even think that, like, I didn't take that Maddie was mad because it was a woman. I think he was just mad because it wasn't him. Right. I think it never comes up as
he was
like
Ray Don Chong.
Sure. I mean, yes, of course. Like, it never does. They never do go down that route, thankfully, and it never becomes a thing of like,
yeah,
you know, oh, oh, I'm not good enough for you, or this, this hog isn't good enough for you anymore, or something like that. I mean, it never goes that way. They're like, pretty respectful about it.
I was waiting for it to say, like, after me, you couldn't. You had to go the other side because.
Oh yeah. No, they thankfully don't do that
because they kill off Layla. She's it's weird that like because Loretta can't be the victim too early for their storyline, they had to give her
someone,
a girlfriend to be and so like it's one of the things with this movie, like, oh, you wanted this attack to affect the main characters, but the main characters can't be together if she's hurt too early. So the girlfriend has to have a girlfriend who gets attacked.
Well, and then that's what sends her down her drug spiral, which kind of takes her out of the movie. Like once she starts like shooting up again, it's just like she's barely in the film.
She's barely in the film, and it made me think about, what is the time frame of this? Like, how fast did she fall apart? I don't know. It seems like this happens over a span of 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's not that short, but it doesn't feel like it's that long either.
No. Before I forget, and this is this kind of pops up on the periphery here and a few other points. Did you notice the newspaper clippings about the murders?
Some. Are those the ones that the killer has in his home, or is that?
Sometimes you see it on the desk of other people because they've been reading up on the murders that are affecting them. And
oh no, I don't think I noticed.
It's like a giant picture of the victim's head. And then it says like slasher strikes again. And it's the front page. And like, I'm trying to picture a world where a stripper gets slashed in the streets and literally the front page of the New York newspaper.
Oh yes,
their
no,
face.
That would not care. That would be buried on like below the fold on like the second to last page of the third section.
It's a blow up of her face. Like literally her ears are both margins of the paper.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, you wouldn't do this. There's not a paper on the plate. Yes, they would have like a Jack the Ripper like the Karate the Ripper strikes again or whatever the fuck they're doing. But they wouldn't put the victim's face if she's a stripper like corner to corner. They would never do that.
They don't give a shit about sex workers in any way.
It's like it says another dancer slashed again, and then a giant picture of her face. I'm like, that's not what would have happened. But I don't know though. This is
1984 New York when that was kind of the big FearCity is a big economy in that area. So maybe it's like, hey, it's a big deal. Maybe the mob owned that paper.
Yeah, there's two things that 1984 New York. There's two important things. It's you got to keep the really good strippers in the strip clubs. Got it. It's very important. It's important there. But most importantly, for the police and for law enforcement, got to keep that pussy off the bar. Got to keep that pussy off the bar.
Yes. Oh my God. When he comes in and says that, that's wild. They get we see them, Matt and Nikki, at their agency, the Starlight Talent Agency. And they're on the phone with various places and trying to like figure out where girls can go on these, this given night. And they get a call from St. Vincent's Hospital. And we find out that the woman who was attacked, her name was Honey, did not die. She actually was okay. And, well, okay, relatively speaking. They go to the hospital, and this is when I noticed, we haven't talked about him, but Nicky, played by Jack Scalia, your favorite actor, because he was in Mel, the turtle movie, that we've brought up multiple times on this show.
Fuck.
And covered more than once. Go back and listen to our multiple episodes about Mel. No other podcast is giving you that. No other podcast is walking you through the film Everyone Loves Mel multiple times like we are.
And yet I hate the fact that we did that.
That's our legacy. If nothing else, like we covered the movie where the turtle flies at the end multiple times.
Oh, I hate it so much.
But this is where I noticed that Jack Scalia looks like a very chiseled Martin Short.
He does. I mean, like, I think everyone who back then didn't want to look like Martin Short.
Sure, but he's like taller.
Wait, everyone.
But he's taller and he's very chiseled. He's a good-looking man. And he talks to Honey.
Everyone's got gorgeous hair in this movie.
Oh, yeah. Everybody looks great. Speaking of Billy Dee and Star Wars, Tom Berenger has a bit of a Han Solo vibe. He's got a cool jacket on. He's very sort of like swaggery. But he's also a little more reserved than Han Solo. Probably less about having fun than Han Solo might be.
Yeah, and more lips. The man's has
yeah. He's a good-looking man. This is height of Berenger babeness for sure.
Berenger mania.
Yes. But yeah, everybody looks good. All the main actors look very, very attractive in this film. But this is when Honey reveals that she was not actually, obviously she wasn't killed because she's talking to them. That would be weird. But that he cut off her fingers with a pair of scissors, which is
he Duranted
horrible.
Her. It is terrifying that she did.
He did Durant her.
Man, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about it, but it's terrifying. Like everything else he does in the movie, nothing touches this.
No, it's pretty gnarly. Like the fact that that's what he did, because we don't know in that scene what's going on, and the fact that it's because her fingers got cut off. It's like, whoa, that's pretty gnarly. And we see this scene. This is our first kind of indication of what Matt used to be. And he's like wandering around in his apartment shirtless, and it appears he's very greased up. I don't know exactly why, if he's just sweating or if they just wanted him to pop in this shot, but he's looking very greasy. And we see a flashback to his boxing days. Some good slow motion punching, which never doesn't look silly. Doesn't matter who's shooting it. It looks silly when you slow mo punch a guy. When you can tell that it's not slow motion, that it's actually the actor slowing his hand down as he punches. And then the guy falls down, and it's like pretty clear that something went wrong. And he obviously did something terrible to that guy. We don't know exactly what. I just assumed that the guy died in the ring, but we find out later that no, he went into a coma and then died.
Because no one dies instantaneously in this movie. Everyone goes to the hospital and then dies.
Except at the end.
Except for the end, which is funny. I thought it was very, very fun to watch 1980s movie boxing where no one puts their hands up to block a single fucking shot. Because like any single one of these punches would drop anybody. I'm trying to picture like an MMA guy today, if this happened, not bragging about it.
Oh yeah, they got punched in the face multiple times and didn't fall.
No, that like killing their opponent and.
Oh yes, okay. Sorry.
Just trying to think like which ones would actually have a moral dilemma with this, and I'm just like, would any of them? If Conor McGregor killed someone, would he not fucking just like go to a bar in Ireland and fucking dance about how great he was? But also. Because like I thought, did they name him Rossi? So cause we get this flashback no less than 9 times.
Oh yeah, we see it a bunch of times from a bunch of different angles,
over and over again. But we always hear the crowd going, "Rossi, Rossi." And I'm like, did you just pick a name that sounded like Rocky?
You know what? God damn, you might be right. They probably did do that on purpose. Like they needed an Italian name because he is Italian, I think.
He's an Italian stallion.
Yeah, he's Italian, so of course they picked something that sounded like Rocky. Yeah, and he's a boxer, of course.
Of course. How many like stories from this movie do you think he told on set during Major League 1 and 2?
Got to see Melanie Griffith's cans.
Okay. We shot like 14 hours of them. It was the best. We just got to tell them we need more angles.
How many stories from this movie did he tell on the set of The Substitute 4 or whichever one of those he comes back for?
Oh man, he's in all the sniper movies. Who knows?
Yeah. And he goes to so part of their job, part of Matt and Nikki's job is to go around to the various clubs where they have girls dancing and check in on the people that are there. And this is when we meet an additional guy, Frank, who is a very very New York Italian guy who owns this club. And this is also when we meet Billy Dee Williams as Al Wheeler, our detective. And he also is checking in on the girls. And this is when he says that immortal line that you brought up earlier, keep the pussy off the bar. And he clearly thinks that Rossi, whose employee, Honey, was viciously attacked, must have something to do with her attack.
There's nothing that gets him off this at all until literally the very last scene of the movie.
Yeah.
Like his entire investigation is, it's Rossi.
Yeah, he's so sure. And it's like, why would he do that? Why would he mess up his profits? you know that he works for the mob. You know that the mob is involved with these various companies. There's more than one, we find out, because they think the motive might be a rivalry between these opposing stripper talent agencies.
The Italian stripper agents talent agency and the Jewish stripper talent agency is exactly what this movie is about for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, and so he thinks that something is involved there, and he still thinks that Rossi is involved, even when other women from his company and from the other company are getting hurt. He still thinks that somehow it's connected.
Because he hates Rossi's arrogance.
Yes, he does not like his arrogance. This is the first of many instances where Billy Dee throws out about as many Italian slurs as you can think of.
We're not going to be saying them on there, but there's some that I hadn't heard in years.
There are that we will not be saying them, but I do have to say there is one later when he sees him in the parking garage, and I laughed so much just because of how he delivers it. Like there is something about his delivery that is just, I mean, it's Billy Dee Williams, so he can say literally anything and put some kind of like magic to it. Even when he is saying Italian slurs, there's like something very funny and like just perfect about how he says it.
Okay. Before we go too far, in accordance with our love of the Hellraiser series, and we're talking about Tom Berenger, we have talked about the question of how many Hellraiser movies are there, right?
Yes, there are 9 or 10, I think.
How many sniper movies are there? And you may wonder yourself, what are the sniper movies? There are a lot of them, and you just do not know it.
Okay,
and
so I know
been around since 1993.
Yeah, he's definitely in the first. Are these all have Tom Berenger, or is it just you're just talking about movies in general?
He is in every one of them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Because I know he's in the first Substitute, and I think he comes back for like Substitute 4, because Treat Williams is in there for a couple of those.
Okay, he's not in one of them, but instead Billy Zane is. But he's in most of them.
Because Billy Zane's in the first Sniper movie.
Yes.
They like have a rivalry, I think. It's been a long time since I've seen those. Okay, let's see. I'm going to guess that there are 6 Sniper movies.
Oh, well, I mean, by Price is Right rules, you haven't failed. You haven't gone over.
Oh, boy.
There are 8 Sniper movies. And by the last one, it came out just in 2020.
Oh, my God.
We have a character named Lady Death who's fighting with or against them.
All right. Well, if you want us to cover the Sniper films, let us know. Sniper September.
If you want us to, Sniper September. I don't think I could stomach 8 movies about master gunner.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's probably not very many
Legendary
guns in this
sniper
movie.
Thomas Beckett and his son, special ops sniper Brandon Beckett, are on the run from CIA, Russian mercenaries, and a Yakuza-trained assassin with sniper skills that rival both legendary sharpshooters are on their tail. That sounds uninteresting.
But yeah, not very many guns in this movie, which I was kind of
which is funny because like
surprised by.
We know that like Rossi won't kill. Rossi is afraid to kill. But we do have Billy Dee Williams hit a target practice very dramatically.
Yeah, but he doesn't shoot anybody.
Nobody shoots anything. And like people keep telling like, we've got to go kill this killer. We have to shoot them in the head. And like, no one does. No one. Their plan is to pull like the person when they think they found the person who is the killer. Their plan is to lure him into the kitchen and beat him up.
And when Nicky does face off with the killer, he uses a big stick to fight him.
And when Nicky, who is, in theory, our third or fourth lead in the movie, faces off with him, he gets his ass kicked in seconds. Literally, he gets kicked.
And ends up in the hospital for the rest of the movie.
So, Jack Scalia must just like fucking just like, why did I let that happen?
So So let's see, where are we at? We have Billy Dee, Al Wheeler. He thinks that Rossi's involved. He wants Rossi to cooperate. He wants him to tell him what he knows and help him get this guy off the streets, whoever it might be, because he still thinks it's him for some reason. We do get some stuff here between Layla and Loretta. They're kind of Layla is going through her purse to try to find money. And then she wakes up Loretta and tries and asks her for money. And I thought it was like, oh, okay, is there going to be some weird like money thing? She's getting like drugs or whatever. And it's like, no, actually, Layla doesn't have that problem. It's Loretta who has that problem. But when she opens this bedside drawer to get her money, she sees inside a photo booth roll of photos with Loretta and Matt. So it's something that Loretta still hangs on to, even though she's in this relationship with Layla. It's still something that is there inside, and Layla kind of questions like, "Are you haven't had enough of men yet? You know, like I'm not good enough for you, basically." So they kind of lean into that a little bit, but they don't go too far with it. And this is when we get that scene that you mentioned already, where Matt and Loretta. He drives her home after a show and they have this long talk, and that's when she's like, I love you too much. You're too great. I can't sleep with you again.
Yeah. Like it would be too good. She wouldn't be able to stop herself if she started. In fact, when they have it once and like, then they don't again, she has to replace it with drugs.
Yes, exactly.
That's my new canon for the movie.
So he takes her home, and at the same time, we see Layla dancing, and she finishes up and heads for the train station. And I think this is a really effective, kind of scary scene because she gets into the subway, the dirty New York subway, and she's trying to catch the train, but it gets past before she gets there. And the same guy attacks her, and he attacks her by slashing at her forehead, so she starts bleeding into her eyes and can't see anything. And then he slashes her hand and the back of her leg. He has this like thing on his hand that's like a razor blade that's like, it's almost like brass knuckles, but with a razor blade in his palm, so he can like make hand motions and slash. And then she like falls down, and we kind of see the train going by as her body just lays there. And it's a really well done scene. Like it's pretty scary and like very effective, but it's also doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like very quick and like sudden.
Every one of these scenes is literally kind of out of a horror movie to a degree.
For sure.
More and more is going on. The only thing undercutting it, and this is just 1984's fault, is him doing these fucking stupid karate moves while he's in between doing shit.
Yeah, I wonder why, like, if that guy, which I want to talk about him, like, if he had some training and they were just like, well, this is great, we'll just add it into the character and add to, like, what this character is, you know, like, because it's so strange to just have that be a thing. And the guy seems to know what he's doing. So I think that was just something that this actor knew. And he, just did it. And they were like, well, that's cool. Let's put that in there.
I'm sure at the time it was cool. It just isn't now.
It's a little silly.
Funny. Yeah. Like then we get to see him in his lair.
Yes. Okay. So he is... And this is why I want to talk about him. He's sitting at this table and he's writing down his experiences. Like, I slashed her leg. He like has this very monotone voice that does not fit with what he looks like.
He's just a dude.
He's just a dude with like kind of a slightly mullety haircut. He looks very young, but his voice is very sort of older and monotone. So I'm kind of wondering if it's not actually his voice, because you never see him speak at all. You only hear his internal monologue when he's writing down these things in his notebook. And he's got these giant anatomy charts on the wall, like where things are. And I want to talk about this guy because there's a fun bit of trivia on the IMDb that says that the name of the killer featured in the film was never revealed, nor is the actor who played him listed during the end credits of the film. And I didn't verify the end credits. They definitely don't say his name. And I was trying to figure out who it was. I was like, who is this actor? Who is this guy? And I finally figured it out. His name is John Foster. This is the only movie he's ever been in. So that makes sense. But it's also very strange because if he can do martial arts, it's weird that he didn't pop up in some other random martial arts movie, even just as a random no-name character who gets killed in a fight or something like that, like, or a stuntman or whatever. Apparently not. Apparently, according to IMDb, this is his only film role. But I was looking through the film, the Wikipedia page for the movie, and I found the guy's name. Apparently, he's listed as Pazzo, Pazzo. That is the killer's name. You never hear it in the movie, so I don't know where that information comes from. But I clicked on his name in Wikipedia, and it takes me to a totally different actor's Wikipedia page, because this guy, the actor it takes me to, Jahangir Ghaffari, and I may be mispronouncing that, is an Iranian actor who was in Bloodsport. And I was like, why did they go to that? And then I looked up Bloodsport, and in that movie, he is credited as John Foster, but it's a different person. So there's no Wikipedia page on this guy because he's only been in one movie. And I was just like, what a weird glitch for them to have.
It really is. And like, I don't know, like it is such a weird choice and an interesting choice to have the killer be this nobody who's just doing things. He's an incel, right?
Oh, for sure. When you hear him talk about how he's like I already mentioned, he's kind of cleansing the city of this filth, and he's doing a good thing, and like he's very incel-y for sure.
And like well, everyone else was becoming boxers or setting up their business of being a talent agency for strippers. He was studying the blade. But like, so he's literally, like in most life, nobody, right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of like really, in cases like this, what actually happens. Thankfully,
Yeah, I think they're going for like the scarier aspect of it. It's just some random dude. He's not connected. It's not connected to the business. It's not connected to Rossi or anything else. It's just some random act of violence that no one can plan for.
And you watch the movie and you see the faces of the guys watching the strippers, because the stripping scenes are so fucking long. And, especially pre-internet, like this is like, to a certain amount of dudes, like the only time they get to see boobies, right?
Yeah.
And they're so fucking into it. And I understand strip clubs still exist, and I understand that, sports athletes can't keep away from them even during pandemics. But for birthday parties for their nephews. That's a very specific reference to an LA Clipper player, I believe.
He's a character.
It's like, in a way, everyone is dangerous to these people.
Yeah.
And, like, it could be anyone. It could be the rival talent agency. It could be their own talent agency who's jealous of them, or can't have them and beats them up or keeps them in line. It could be the people in the front row. It could literally be anyone. And it turns out it's just some guy who doesn't even go there. He just hates strippers.
That was the other thing. It was like, I was curious why we never saw him at the clubs at all. It was just kind of like, he just knew who they were. He knew what they did, and he wanted to, quote, punish them for what they did.
Just punish Mike instead. He's the one who's owns the strip club. He's the one who fat shamed somebody.
Oh my God.
What is that? That was supposed to be funny, right?
It was absolutely supposed to be funny. If there's anything in this movie that does not work, it's a scene later on where there is a
there's a much like we go through now the pandemic. There is a supply shortage in the the logistics chain of, in this case,
Yes.
strippers, because no one wants to work because they're getting hurt. And so he has to suffer a plus size stripper.
Yeah.
And everyone boos her.
Yeah. That's the one scene that I think like you could just cut out of the movie entirely and it wouldn't matter. It would not affect anything.
You didn't need to comedically put up the fact that like, oh, he has no talent because none of the talent wants to work. Not like he has unattractive talent that's making him like Mike's character is a joke in general.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, why did you do this? Like, this movie is so self-serious every other inch. Like every one of, and like, mind you, like every one of Rossi's flashbacks reminded me of Airplane, of like, and like just like it like every time he flashes back, it like and starts sweating. It's like it's getting more and more ridiculous, but it's played completely seriously.
Oh yeah, of course.
And when we flash back to the shoe shine scene, I laugh and it's graphic as fuck.
I forgot about that scene, but that scene is pretty amazing. So yeah, we get some more information that kind of from the doctor about Layla's attacker, where he says that he had knowledge of anatomy so that the death wouldn't be instant. So again, we're kind of playing into the whole Jack the Ripper thing. Like this is very much what they're kind of going for.
No
and
one
does
says
Layla
Jack the Ripper
die?
enough. Yes. That's why when she dies of her injury, that's when the drug use starts for Loretta.
That's right. Okay. So, you know, they kind of are going through this whole thing. They're trying to figure out like what they need to do. Nikki's like, oh, we should just kill the guy. And Matt's like, you don't have the guts to do that. Like it's like a whole thing where nobody knows what to do. This is when like the mobsters that they work for say that Goldstein, another booker also connected to the mob, might be behind the attacks because it's only Rossi's girls that are getting hurt. So he goes after Goldstein, but then Goldstein's like, hey, I didn't do it. And he's like, okay, I believe you. And then that's the end of that subplot.
Well, he puts a gun to his head and says, and he's like, if you're lying, I'll kill you. And he doesn't have to because he's not lying. I mean, later when a Goldstein's strippers gets attacked, he basically like, well, you blame me, and so I could blame you, but also let's just work together.
Yeah. And then we get this great scene with Wheeler and his partner, and they're talking about the slasher, and he's like, I wonder if it's not Billy Dee just lends these dumbass lines a lot of gravity, like it might not be mob related after all. It could just be random. Like it's just so silly.
The problem is because he has nothing to do in this movie besides say Italian slurs. But like every time he comes on screen, he's 10 times the star and charisma of everybody else. And you're like, yeah, keep talking, Billy. Just yell things. This is where we have Nikki looking up a scrapbook of Matt's boxing career, which, you know, is what you do is you just sit around looking at news clippings of your buddy's boxing career where he killed opponents.
He does that like that is weird. Like I think
Matt should be doing that, not Nikki.
But I think Nikki was like his coach or something, right?
Coach or manager. They're buddies.
Manager, yeah.
Childhood friends.
Yeah, we get some good shots of the killer doing some extended nunchuck work, which looks pretty legit.
It looks pretty great, I gotta say. I was like, all right, cool, nunchucks.
And this is when like Matt and Loretta start to rekindle their relationship. He takes her down to the wharf and he gives her a birthday gift, which is a necklace that says, I love you when you spin it.
Very subtle.
What carnival did he buy that from?
What was the carnival movie we watched?
Oh, Carnival of Blood or something like
Carnival
that.
Of Blood. He went to the Carnival of Blood.
Yeah, he went down to Coney Island and he threw a ball at a bottle and he got this necklace.
I like they go back to one of their places after this, and he's just drinking whiskey, and she comes in wearing barely anything.
Yeah. Oh, this is the scene. Yeah. I thought when he puts that, like, the hairband in her mouth, I thought it was a paintbrush. And I was like, where did he get that from?
I thought it was a pencil at first. That's why I had to rewind it. He legitimately, like, there's something about, like, movie scenes, if you think about the actors, what they're actually doing, it's always uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But, like, somehow if they're touching each other and they're both naked, like, there's just something, it's what it is. It's a performance there. But, like, when he legitimately puts his hands up Melanie Griffith's shirts and cups her actual breasts, which have no bra on, and she has the tiniest shirt you've ever seen. It's like, in my head, I'm like, that's Tom Berenger legitimately getting a handful of all her breasts. And I'm like, I shouldn't be watching this. This is terrible. And then after all this nudity, they just fade to black.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up with a nosebleed like an anime character.
We do get this great scene here. One of their dancers, Silver, played by Maria Conchita Alonso, is going home, and she thinks that there's someone after her. And this scene is actually really good. She's going upstairs, but she hears some noise downstairs. She hears someone following her. So she, like, runs inside and, like, hides in her apartment really quick and looks out the peephole and sees this, like, kind of shuffling old man coming up the stairs after her. And then she's like, oh, I overreacted. And then the camera pulls back and the guy's just right inside her apartment door, and he just stabs her right in the back. And it's like, holy shit, I was not expecting that. Like, it's very well done.
Yeah, like, everything is a really good slasher film setup for this character, except for he's just a guy. Like, he's not Mike Myers or anything.
He doesn't have, like, a cool look either. And I guess that's the point, is that it's just some random dude. Like, it's just some random white guy, which is usually how these things go.
Right. And it's not, like I said, it's not Mike Myers, so he's not showing up behind him and going, yeah, baby, and then hitting them with fucking.
But this is when we get a name for him, which we like in these kinds of movies where they come up with, like, dumbass names for these things that are happening. And the news is calling him the New York Knifer.
Real bad. Really bad. Someone should get fired over that.
Good thing it's sort of alliterative, because what would they have done if it was anywhere else?
It would have to be like Nantucket or something.
The Nantucket Knifer. Yeah, I like that. The Buffalo Butcher. That's a good one. The Chicago Stabber. No, that doesn't work.
No, that doesn't
work. Chicago Cutter.
The Cutter, yes.
Yes. The Los Angeles... oh man, come on. The LA
Lady Stabber.
There you go. The LA Lady Stabber. The LA Lady Stabber struck again last night.
So if that actually happens in the next few years, copyright me. Someone's got to give me all the money from their subscription service for the
news
LA
has
Times.
to pay you.
The news has to pay me.
Oh man, I just can't imagine, like, oh honey, I need to turn on the news and see what the New York Knifer has done this time.
God, the podcast episode about the New York Knifer in 2020 are just riveting, and then the Netflix special upon it.
Yeah, the podcast is called Knifing Around,
and everyone's like, man, I know he's kind of a generic looking white guy, but actually he's kind of attractive. He's shockingly attractive.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty ripped. He does a lot of martial arts.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect a guy who looks so good to be a stabber, a knifer.
Yeah.
In the movie, he's going to be played by Billy Zane. No one.
This is when we get the aforementioned flashback to Maddie as a kid, as a shoe shine boy.
This is so, like, okay. For all the flashbacks
does this take place in the 40s? I guess it does.
I guess it takes place in the 40s. It is, for all his flashbacks about the fucking boxing match, which there are 75 of them. This is so much more traumatic. I can't, like, what I thought he was watching a movie like it was Home Alone. Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
what is happening?
These very sort of stereotypical mobsters come out and they're chatting, laughing about someone who died. I think that's what they're doing. They're telling a story about some guy who I think hung to death or something.
We're supposed to know
And
that they're not good guys.
yes, and they sit down and they're friendly with Maddie because he's always there shining their shoes. And as they're sitting there, a car pulls up and a guy hops out with a machine gun and just guns them down. And we see multiple angles. We see multiple shots. It goes on for a few seconds longer than it should of their
It's
chests
like
exploding into blood.
It's like at least a 1/5 RoboCop, right?
Yes. It's wild, and they fall on the ground and they're dead, and it looks like he sort of catches eyes with the guy in the car who kind of just gives him like a nod and then drives away, and it's like, how did he get involved with the mob after that?
Well, now they owe him, according to the Wikipedia.
Wait, what?
So after Nikki was beat up, Wikipedia says, hungry for vengeance and seeking guidance, Rossi visits a local mafioso named Carmine, with whom he has built omerta. And I'm probably saying that wrong. Many years ago, when he witnessed him killing someone in a drive-by shooting, but didn't report it to the police. So that is basically he did the code of silence, and so the mobsters owe him.
Oh, and so they sort of took him under their wing, and
yes, and that's why later when Carmine, who isn't that much older than him for having killed somebody when he was a little boy in 1940s, says like, I've trusted you since you were a little boy.
Okay, that makes more sense now. I figured that's what it was, but it just seemed weird to me to be like, hey, I saw these guys kill my friends. I'm gonna go work for them now.
Now this guy who did it is now a father figure to me.
Yes.
I had some trouble really wrapping my brain around that, but I didn't grow up in New York City.
That's true. This is in the moment in the movie where Loretta goes to the hospital to see Layla, but she gets there right as Layla is crashing and she dies.
Layla's got her on her knees.
Yeah. Fuck you. And she goes to see Jorge, this guy who used to sell her drugs, and she buys some drugs from him, and obviously hasn't used in a while because the guy, when she shows up, he's like, welcome back, or good to see you again, or something like that. So
he's like, welcome back, Cotter, and she's like, up my nose with a rubber hose.
So we kind of see this is about the moment where sort of Loretta isn't really much in the movie anymore because she's constantly sort of dealing with doing drugs again, and it kind of becomes a whole thing. We finally get this scene, which I knew, like, I was already into the movie, and then this scene happened, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Which is, we see again the killer writing about this woman that he killed with nunchucks, and we see the flashback of him like hooking the nunchucks around her arm and throwing her onto the ground and hitting her with them. It's very silly, and like he's clearly, like, his narration clearly labels him as like a misogynist. Like we can tell what it is, and he finishes it, and it's like he finishes chapter 8, and he closes this book, and it's this old like brown leather folio, but on the cover he has scrawled in red FearCity. So the name of the movie comes from the book being written by the misogynist slasher.
His men's right book.
Yes, this is his manifesto.
His manifesto. Is this where he's doing the naked kata?
It's somewhere around here. Like, I think they start to kind of cut back and forth between these, because
that's pretty funny. So I assume I'm guessing we're supposed to assume we only see his butt, that he's supposed to have the biggest heart on while doing this naked con.
I think so, because this is when the rival gangs team up, because they're like, all right, fine, you know, all our girls are getting attacked now. The girl who was killed with nunchucks was part of Goldstein's organization, and so now it's like, all right, well, now we have to team up and find this guy, and they don't do a good job.
No, this is like, you know, Scrooge McDuck and Flintheart Goldglum teaming up finally, and they still don't get anything done. Like I said, an hour and 10 in this movie, and there's not a fucking soul in this movie who has the first clue who the killer actually is, and they don't have a clue how to even start to look for him.
No,
if he doesn't
they
show
have no
up,
idea.
If they didn't catch, if he's not caught by like attacking Loretta by Rossi later in the movie, they never find him.
No, he just gets away. But it's really funny because they're trying to figure out what to do and try to like protect the girls, but obviously things are not working. And this is when we get this moment where this is just a comical series of events, which is like mistaken identity that you would see in a sitcom, because Nicky goes into a bar to check on the women who are working, and he goes to the bathroom. And while he's in the bathroom, there's a guy there washing his hands, and he catches sight inside the guy's pocket of a scalpel, and he thinks, oh, this might be the slasher. I need to figure out what's going on. We're gonna take this guy out. So he goes and he tells Frank, the club owner, hey, I think this guy's got a knife in his pocket. We need to get him alone and figure out what's going on. So they get the woman who's dancing that he seems to be very into to try to get him back into the kitchen so they can ambush him. And she drags him back there, and he thinks that he's about to get laid or whatever. And then they have the most comical, out-of-place fight sequence. It makes no sense. It does not fit into the overall, like, spooky, sinister tone of the movie. But it's them throwing, like, metal trays at this guy. Like, it's so goofy. And then when Matt shows up and starts going into boxer mode and nearly beats this guy to death.
It's so funny because, like... Because this guy isn't like a young guy or a tough looking guy. If you're Canadian, you would know he looks like Doug Ford, the premier of Ontario. He's this big dude with a big head, middle age, just thick everything, right? Receding hairline, graying hair. And they pull him back there for, in theory, Nicky to rough him up, to beat him down and figure out what's going on. He handles them all.
Yes, he destroys them. Until Matt shows up, he's beating the shit out of these guys. He breaks Frank's nose. Like, it's so good.
He's so much bigger than that. It's like if you ever watch one of those videos, because sports fans are crazy since the pandemic ended, where they get all the fights in the stands, where some guy picks a fight with somebody and he's all mouth, and then he finally punches this older guy, and the older guy beats the shit out of him. And like, this is what like the guy, like, I'm like, okay, they're gonna beat him up, and then they're gonna like find out he's not the guy. No, he beats them up in this small little kitchen, and all of a sudden they're throwing shit at him, and it isn't even working. It's like they're throwing literally the kitchen sink at him.
And when Rossi does show up and like has a like you see the flashback to him fighting his opponent, like from his POV, and he sort of like imprints that guy onto this big dude, and he's just punching away at him, not stopping until Nicky sees inside the guy's jacket that there's a plane ticket from Chicago, and he's like, wait, that's not the guy.
He's just a random pervert.
Yeah, they find out that he's an architect, which still doesn't explain why he's walking around with a scalpel in his pocket.
Because he's going to 1984 New York. He's got to protect himself. Because anyone can pull him back into a kitchen and beat the shit out of him.
But he doesn't go for that scalpel once.
No, he doesn't, because he doesn't want to kill somebody.
We get a lot of stuff really rapid fire here. Like Matt goes to Loretta's, but she's like too high on heroin to answer the door. We see Wheeler practicing his shooting, and he's very good. He's hitting center mass each time, and like puts a couple right in the middle of the forehead. Never once shoots anybody, so it doesn't really matter. But we see a girl kind of walking along on the streets, and then she's like slashed by a sword. And I'm like, how is he able to just stand on the street with a sword and cut this woman?
I don't know. There's a dude across the street from me who fucking practices his whip on the sidewalk. So anything.
Oh, that's right. We haven't had an update. Longtime listeners of this show will remember that Skinner lives across the street from Whip Man, a guy who practices his whip on a cross in his front yard.
He practiced his whips. He dual wields.
Multiple whips.
He has a whip in each hand.
How's that been going? Has he been holding up? Is he still out there training? Is he keeping his skills sharp?
I haven't seen him in a while. I was worried because every now and then there's a guy who goes down the street who does, I think, TikToks while some guy in a car slowly drives beside him while he dances to Brazilian music. He's fantastic. He's my favorite person in the world. But he goes in front of the Whipmaster's house, and I'm worried that their worlds will collide.
I need there's listeners out there, if you somehow know... One, don't dox where Skinner lives if you know this guy, if he's on TikTok or not, the Whipmaster. But if so, please let us know so we can enjoy those videos, because I'm dying to see this. Like, I want to go visit Skinner just so I can hopefully like just camp out in his office with binoculars and watch Whipman do his thing.
I assume in theory the reason I haven't seen him as much in 2021 is because all the Renfests are back open this year.
Oh man, I hadn't thought about Whipman in a while, so thank you for bringing that back. I'm surprised that our killer doesn't use a whip at some point.
I'm always surprised, like every time I see someone walking down the street, because I live in a very populated by young families area, very densely populated, people with pets and kids, and I see them freely walking down the sidewalk. I think about that day that guy was just whipping the air with 2 whips, and everyone had to go around him because they didn't want to be hit by 2 whips.
Oh man, like, yeah, what do you this neighborhood's really lovely. I think you're going to love this house. I mean, I do have to warn you, your next door neighbor is a whipmaster, and he will be out in the yard and on the sidewalk dual wielding whips regularly. So you will have to be careful of that. Make sure your children know they're not out on the sidewalks between 3:30 and 4:30, because that is when he practices his whipping. Be very careful. We have tried to ask him to stop, but there's just really nothing we can do because, again, he has 2 whips. So
yes, I mean, like at some point I'm just going to put in the name of my town and the last name Belmont and see if anybody comes up.
This town used to be infested with vampires, but obviously there are no more of them.
That's right. In case you're wondering, I live in Castlevania, Minnesota.
We get a bunch of stuff here. Like, Matt gets a call about the other woman who was killed, Cindy. I think that's the one who's cut in half by a sword. He freaks out and destroys his office. Basically, none of the girls want to work, until they find the killer.
They shouldn't.
And Frank and Matt get arrested for beating up that guy. And
then that's when Wheeler beats the shit out of Rossi.
Yeah, he has him like tied up to a chair in this dark room, and they start. He kind of he talks about law and order, and he's like laying out the whole thing about like, I have a badge and that means law and order and all this other bullshit. And he's still a cop. It's Billy Dee Williams and we like him, but he's still a shitty cop. And he asks if he understands, and Matt understands that Wheeler's mom is probably getting gangbanged right now, which leads to Wheeler punching him. Also, this is when one of our characters finally interacts with the killer, because Nikki was supposed to pick up his wife. We haven't really talked about her because she doesn't have much of a role, Ruby. She works at one of the clubs. Is that right? And she's the daughter of someone. Like, or is she like, I'm not really sure who she's the daughter of, because she mentions being the boss's daughter, but I wasn't sure if she was the daughter of one of the mob guys, if she's the daughter of Mike, the club owner, if like I don't.
I thought maybe it was the mob guy because all of a sudden Carmine is very intent that Matt has to kill the killer.
Sure, yeah. But Nicky wakes up late and he realizes he's supposed to pick up his wife, but he fell asleep, I guess. And
it happens to all of us.
And forgot to go get her. Yeah, it's really easy to like lay down and take a nap when there's a murderer out on the streets of New York and you're supposed to like pick up your wife so that she's not just standing on the streets waiting to get murdered. Oh, I'm so tired. I got to take a nap.
God, the Mets game went real late last night. Extra innings.
So she tries to call him from a payphone and is grabbed by the slasher from behind and is being...
She's grabbed by ghoulies.
And is being pulled into the alleyway as Nicky pulls up and grabs a stick to run at the killer, who handily beats the shit out of him, kicks him a bunch of times in the chest, knocks him out, and runs off.
And then does the most fucking funny runaway I've ever seen. Like,
yeah,
his hands are in that flat like karate chop thing, and he's just pumping as he runs towards the camera.
It's like a goofier T-1000 run.
like it did a great job of making him seem like he doesn't know how to be human.
Yeah,
but word that was actually the actor who didn't know how to be quite human.
No. And Maddie gets bailed out of jail. He finds out that Nicky's in the hospital.
From being kicked.
From being kicked and apparently caused internal bleeding. So, like, that's a pretty serious kick. Like, I don't know if he, like, ruptured some ribs or something, but, yeah, apparently he fucked him up. And this is when he goes to see Carmine, the mob boss that he works for. And he kind of tells him
delicious meal.
They have a really nice looking meal at this social club. And he's like, don't let your rage blind you. You have to study your enemy and know him, which is like,
they don't know who he is.
How am I supposed to do that? I have no idea. And then we get this like great montage where Matt goes to the church and he's like, Father, I need forgiveness for something I'm about to do. And he's like, well, I can't give it to you.
He's like, not even God can forgive a sin that you have not yet committed, which is a great like name for like a nice long name for a poem, but like it's so out of place in this movie for some reason.
Yeah, and then for whatever reason, I guess Matt decides he's going to check into like a random flophouse hotel or motel rather, so he can prepare. And I thought it was like, oh, so he can kind of be on the lookout and he can be watching for, people at the clubs. Maybe it's across from the club so he can really pay attention to who goes in and out. But no, none of that ever happens. It's just him shadow boxing in a mirror.
Apparently he, even though he hasn't boxed since, besides being that guy, Doug Ford in the kitchen, like he hasn't boxed since he killed this guy. All he had to do was skip for a while and shadow box, and then he was powerful enough to defeat this karate master.
Yeah, we see them kind of training
either this karate
here.
guy is actually not that good and is just pretending to be TV karate guy, and everyone else is just kind of a wuss too, or like Matt's the best boxer who ever lived. This is very much a like, what's better than karate? Boxing.
Yeah. This newfangled thing that people are talking about now. Well, boxing's been around much longer, and it's like, no, it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. Like the whole treatise of this movie is, if a good boxer fought a karate guy, he'd kill him.
Yeah, it is kind of that. Like it
which was like a conversation people had before UFC and stuff. Like, oh, this would be this would be no, it's submissions and kickboxing. That's the combination.
And so we see also the slasher kind of doing his own training. He kicks a mirror and breaks it.
Why would you do that? You clean it up later.
Matt's jumping rope and doing some handstand push-ups, which are very hard, so good for him. And we kind of see, like, we get back to Loretta now, who's sort of still dealing with kind of doing drugs again. Matt calls her and he tells her to kind of stay off the street, and he loves her. But she still goes out to get more drugs, and we see the slasher following her around. So we're like, okay.
If this didn't happen, Matt would have never found this killer.
Yeah, I know. And so she's kind of wandering around. She goes back to the club and she gets some money and some mace, and then takes that money and goes back to the drug person, Jorge. But when she knocks on the door, no one answers, and she happens to glance up and see him hanging from a fire escape. So this is
the most horror movie thing of the movie.
Yeah, this is the first time that the killer has killed a man, as far as we know.
And he straight up killed him. He didn't do anything that which is like
no, he hung him from a fire escape. That guy is dead.
Yeah.
And suddenly, of course, the slasher is right there. He stabs her in the back of the leg so she can't try to get away, and she'll
never dance again.
And she turns and sprays the mace right at his eyes, and of course that hurts him. And as he's recovering, at the end of the alleyway, backlit with fog around him, is Matt standing there, ready to go. And I'm like, oh shit, yes, we're going to get a great little fight. It's not really that great. It's very clumsy, but...
It is boxing versus karate, which is what you want.
Yes. It's pretty good for this, though. I'm very happy with this being the end of the movie.
I mean, if you have this guy training for martial arts naked for most of the movie, and your main guy's having flashbacks about how he was too good at boxing, you really have to end it with a boxer versus karate.
Yeah, of course,
master fight.
And he once again has a flashback, just like he did when he was beating up that guy in the kitchen, which makes me think that if they had not stopped him, he would have also killed that guy in the kitchen.
Which is weird because the whole idea is that he regrets killing him, not that he was a killing machine at the time.
It's like he goes into a fugue state whenever he's boxing, and it's just like, I'm going to kill whoever's in front of me.
Oh man, he could have been such a big star and been so much more richer.
And he, of course, destroys this guy, like basically just pummels him to death. And the cops show up because Loretta ran off and got them, and Wheeler's there, and he bends down, and the slasher's dead. Like he's just been pummeled to death. They don't know his name. They don't know where he lives. I mean, maybe the guy
don't know why he did it.
Yeah, maybe the guy's got his wallet on him, and they can figure out where he lives and find his manifesto. But something tells me he probably doesn't. So they'll just be so like,
funny that
some John Doe has been killing people. We have no idea who he is.
You said this character who has a manifesto that is the titular line, and if you do that, someone has to, before the end of the movie, someone has to figure out who he is, break into his house, and find the manifesto, read it, and then desperately call everybody to find him before he strikes again, and then you kill him.
Yeah, but no.
Instead, nobody ever finds the book that is the title of the fucking movie.
They'll find it whenever he misses a couple of rent payments, and they go up to he misses 1 month's rent, and then they go up and they're like, "Hey, motherfucker, you got to pay or you got to get out." And then they go inside, and there's nothing inside his apartment except some anatomical drawings, a broken mirror, and a book. And they're like, "Okay, I think this guy might be a murderer."
He's either a murderer or he's a college kid.
Yeah. This is truly one of the guys who does not have a bed frame. His mattress is definitely on the floor.
Absolutely. So here's my favorite thing. So Wheeler has not done anything. He has been angry at everybody. He's done we don't see him hitting the streets trying to solve the mystery at any point. He's trying to harass our main character. He's sitting by his car at one point where he's like, "Back off my car, buddy." And he's done nothing. And he shows up and the killer's already dead, killed by this guy who he has hated the entire movie. And he goes up to Ross and he goes, "Huh, you think you're a hero?" And Rat goes, "Not even the slightest." And he goes, "Well, maybe you are." That's it. And then Rossi gets in the car, face full of blood, and starts making out with poor Melanie Griffith. And then the song kicks in.
Yeah, and then it's over. It's just so funny how he turns it's that
"You son of a bitch."
Yeah, it's very much that you could have gotten yourself killed out there, but great work.
Are you a hero?
He is the
Who's to
cop,
say?
but he
yes.
takes on the role of mad police chief at that moment. Like,
I mean, also in another movie, they would have become friends before the end of the movie.
yeah.
Instead, it happens in the last line of the movie.
Yeah. He's like, maybe you're not so bad after all. Maybe you're not this Italian slur that I called you multiple times.
Because you boxed this killer to death. You're still the talent agency manager of strippers, which I do not like.
Yes.
But, and you know, as long as you keep that pussy off the bar, you're now my good graces.
Man, I said it at the beginning, but it's a blast of a movie. Like it's super fun. It's super quick. Like it just blows through all this stuff. You're never bored. Like it's a tight 95 minutes, which is exactly what you want for this kind of thing. Honestly, could be a little shorter if you cut out that fat shaming scene and you cut down some of the stripping scenes, but it didn't totally ruin the entire experience for me. But man, it's a fun one if you like 80s sleaze.
And it is sleazy. If you don't like 80s sleaze, or like, you know, if we've mentioned there's just a lot of violence on women and a lot of strippers and nudity in this movie, and you're like, that's exploitative. You're right. Do not watch this.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
This movie is sleazy as fuck. And like, we don't mean like fun side sleazy. It is sleazy as fuck. It is trying to sell. It's like, hey, you want to see boobies? We have this movie that is full of boobies. You get to see boobies. You can pretend you're watching a movie, but you're also getting titillated like these characters in the actual movie. But like this movie, if you are okay with that, for whatever reason, like it is just, it doesn't pull literally any punches.
No, definitely not.
It is not. The only thing it does pulls back on is sex scenes, which is fine. But like, once again, Tom Berenger got his hands full in this movie. It is exactly what we hoped for when we picked FearCity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was very pleased to not have my hopes dashed, let's just say, because I was very into this poster and I was hoping for the best, and I think that we got it as best as we could hope for with something like this. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for this episode on 1984's FearCity. I'm so excited. I still am riding the high from this thing, and I watched it like a week ago. But until next time, when we are revealing the next film that we're covering on the show, I've been Josh.
I've been Skinner.
And we predict you'll join us
here in FearCity. That's my book is titled. Like, he put a lot of work into the cover of that book. Like, I know he hates women. I know he loves the blade and martial arts, but I think his real passion is graphic design.
If you like the show, subscribe, rate, and review us over at Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter and Instagram at PredictoCast, and you can find our entire back catalog at predictocast.com. Our theme music is by Kyle Sledge. Find more of his work at soundcloud.com/geistmusic. As always, thanks for listening.